We have already discussed about these figures. You can check out the previous video on the Neophysics YouTube channel. The video about anomalistic, sidereal and tropical years. These figures correspond to the different definitions of the length of an year based on the relative motion between the Earth and the Sun. These definitions are from a later part of history because observing the movement of Sun is difficult, as we would need specialized, standardized and calibrated instruments and observational structures, observatories, to note the position of the moon or sun during sunrise, sunset or during the middle of the day or sometimes. However, for tracking the movement and phases of the moon, we just need a pair of eyes, and it could be done instantly from anywhere on Earth. So intuitively, ancient people started off first with the observations of moon and the background star system. The initial concepts of a month and an year were based on the movements of moon and the phases of moon. The revolution of moon around the Earth can be associated with two types of periods. One is the sidereal period, defined with respect to the distant stars, like in the sidereal year case that we discussed earlier here. It has a period of about 27.3 something days. And the second is the synodic period of about 29.5 days, which is the period between the two successive full moons or two successive new moons. This configuration here shows the full moon condition, in which all these three objects, the sun, the earth and the moon, are aligned on a straight line, and the earth is situated between the sun and the moon. So when the earth is situated between the sun and the moon, this is the full moon condition. If moon is in between the sun and earth, then it's a new moon condition. So if we extend the straight line, we can also note that there are these distant stars in the background of the full moon. In the Hindu lunar calendar, the names of these stars, so each of these star sectors are associated with some name, and the names of these star sectors is used to name the full moon, so identify the full moon. So each full moon can be identified by the name associated with this background star group that appears. For example, if the full moon is with the background of this Chitra nakshatra, then the moon is identified as Chaitra Purnima or Chaitra full moon. Purnima is full moon, so this will be Chaitra Purnima. The synodic period of 29.5 days is used as the basis for defining a month in the Hindu calendar. That is, the month can be defined from full moon to full moon. This is in the North Indian system, which is called the Purnimanta system. Or it can be defined as the period between new moon to new moon, which is used in the South Indian system, which is called the Amanta system. Amavasya is new moon, so Amanta, Ama, Anta, Amavasya, Anta is end. So Amanta system is the South Indian. So whenever this full moon happens, it marks the change of the previous month. That is, the month can be defined from full moon to full moon or new moon to new moon. We will just use the full moon based definitions here for simplicity. So we'll just focus on one kind of definition. So this Chaitra full moon marks the end of Chaitra month. So whenever the full moon happens in the background of the Chaitra star, it marks the end of the Chaitra month. So the month would have started 29.5 days earlier. So when this full moon happens in the background of the Chaitra nakshatra, then Chitra nakshatra, then that month ends. Similarly for the new moon we can define, but we'll just focus on the full moon to full moon thing. So this marks the end of Chaitra month and the beginning of the next month, which is called Vaishakha. The next immediate full moon will happen in the neighboring sector, somewhere here, and the next one will shift to a sector further away. So it will keep shifting like this. The next moon will be slightly shifted towards the neighboring sectors, nakshatra sectors. So after going through all the sectors in the circle, the full moon will be back in the vicinity of its original position. So wherever it started, it will not be exactly back to the same position, but it will be generally in the approximate vicinity of the original location. So therefore, in order to accommodate this approximate location, the background nakshatra specified is not an exact angle, like in this sidereal case, sidereal year definition case that we saw earlier, where we defined that the sun should be, if the sun starts at 0 degree Aries, it will come back exactly to 0 degree Aries. So it's not like that. We have a range of angles which is defined by this branch or a sector of these nakshatras. So this nakshatra is not an exact angle. The location of the background nakshatra specified is over a range, the range of about 26 degree 40 minutes. So this range includes one full nakshatra sector at the center, like this Chitra nakshatra sector, which is about 13 degree 20 minutes in angle, and also it includes half sectors from the immediate neighboring nakshatra sectors, as shown here. And a full moon anywhere with this background, that is this centered with Chaitra, and half from this Hasta and half from this Swati sector. So anywhere it happens, then it is classified as Chaitra full moon, and it marks the end of Chaitra month. So because of this range, the earliest full moon in this sector can happen in this configuration, with the straight line pointing at the middle of the Swati lunar mansion. So lunar mansions are basically nakshatras. That's the English name, lunar mansion. And the latest it can happen is in this configuration, when the line is pointing at the middle of the Hasta lunar mansion. So there is a gap or a range of about 30 days between these full moon configurations. And every few months, around 30, 32, 33 months, it so happens that there can be two full moons or two new moons within the same sector. So if we have defined the sector this with one central nakshatra and half other neighboring nakshatra sectors. So if it happens here, and within this sector, within this nakshatra sector, there can be two full moons or two new moons sometimes. Every couple of months it will happen. So basically what happens is the first full moon will happen at this Swati end, right in the middle of the Swati, and the immediate next full moon will happen at the Hasta end. And in such cases, the first full moon which happens here near this Swati sector is considered as an out of turn or an extra full moon, and the month is classified as an Adhika Masa or an extra month, and there are no auspicious events in that, no functions, no Hindu functions are usually celebrated. It's considered as an extra month and it's not counted, but this extra month is added to the year. So usually, normally in a lunar year, there are 12 full moons or 12 new moons. So 12 full moons means it takes about 354, 355 days, because 29.5 into 12 is about 354, is 354. So this is about the period of 12 full moons, and whenever this extra month comes that we defined earlier, when two full moons happen immediately within the same sector, then this extra month or the Adhika Masa happens, then this lunar year will have 13 moons or 13 months in that. So which is 13 into 29.5 is 383.5, so it will have 383, 384 days. So at a lower end there is this 354, 55 kind of days, and at the higher end there is 383 to 385 number of days when there are these extra months. So this extra month also helps in synchronizing the sun moon cycles, and there are even more longer and even shorter term corrections of adding and deleting months and even days, or thithis. Basically tithi is a lunar day, so we'll discuss about it later if needed. So Bhaskara has suggested some corrections about every 19 years and every 122 years or 141 years and such. So there are these Adhika Masas are not the only corrections required. There are many more other corrections required in order to synchronize between the moon cycles and the sun cycle. Overall, we expect that if with all these corrections, complicated corrections, the length of the lunar year over a long term of about hundreds of years or thousand years should match the sidereal year length as seen here, that is 365.2564 days per year, because all these months are being defined in terms of the background stars. So they are these definitions are locked to the star system. So we expect that, like in the sidereal year, the solar year of based on the stars, this also should have 365.2564 days. But the ancient Indian astronomers have all consistently overestimated the length of the year by a few decimal places. We can see that in this table. So Surya Siddhanta says about 365 days, 6 hours, 12 minutes and 36.56 days, and the lowest one is Siddhanta Shiromani by Bhaskara 2. The lowest estimate seems to be about 365.2588 days. When we convert this hours and minutes into days, this will be about 365.2588 days. So these estimates, all these estimates are much closer to the anomalistic year length, this 365.2596, than to the tropical year length. So because these year lengths, the lengths of these years is not equal to the tropical year length, this causes a slow drift of the seasons away from the designated or expected Hindu months. That is, we expect the Chaitra month to be always associated with the spring season. But because of the difference with the tropical year over a time scale of say 2000 years, the spring season may drift by an entire month. So the whole of Chaitra may miss the spring season. It may shift to some other season. It may shift to say winter season, shift back to the winter season. And even further, if we on even larger time scales, it can even go back further to autumn and even summer. We have discussed about this drift of the seasons in another video on our channel, Neophysics channel. You can check out that video. So we can, if we want, we can correct these kinds of errors, the drift of the seasons with respect to the Hindu months, by redefining the months. Instead of locking the months and these definitions to the star system, the zodiac and the nakshatras, we can peg them to the solstices and equinoxes instead of the stars. So we will discuss about that in the next slide. So we already looked at this lunar sidereal calendar based on the distant stars, so where the full moons are classified based on the background stars, and we also looked at these periodicities in the previous slide, and we saw that whether it is 365.2564 or 365.2588 or whatever the periodicity of this, it will still be drifting. The seasons will still be drifting from their designated months. So for example, Chaitra we expect to be always associated with the spring season, and it drifts over a long time. Over a period of time, it starts drifting, so Chaitra can become winter season instead of spring, and so on. So in order to rectify that, if we want to rectify that, so instead of pegging or locking these full moons and the months defined by these full moons based on these background stars, instead of locking these configurations to these background stars, we can lock this configuration with respect to the solstices and equinoxes. So then we will get seasonally accurate calendar, seasonally accurate months where there will be no seasonal drift. So this is configuration of the summer solstice. Suppose there was a full moon on or before the summer solstice. So at this point we will not name this moon, or will not change the months and all. So we can consider, this is one of the possibilities. There can be other possibilities. This is one of the possibilities how we can define a seasonally accurate lunar tropical calendar. So this is a lunar sidereal calendar based on the stars. We'll have define a lunar tropical calendar based on the solstices and equinoxes. So this is a normal, there is nothing happening. So this is just the summer solstice, and there was a full moon on or before summer solstice. So this is not important. So this So what is important is this one. So right after this summer solstice, the first full moon we see after the summer solstice, we will associate this with Ashada full moon, and we will change the month from Ashada to the next month at this point. Instead of this kind of definitions, we will follow this kind of definitions where the months, or there will be some particular months that we will define based on the full moon, whether it's happening right after the summer solstice, or right after the spring equinox, and right after the autumnal equinox, and so on. So in this classification, the moons are classified based on the solstices and equinoxes, and this is a possible definition of a modified Hindu calendar. This is for ritual purposes. So we can still celebrate the fifth day of the Chaitra full moon, or the 10th day of the Ashwina Amavasya, and so on. We can still have all those definitions, all those ritualistic definitions intact, but it will be seasonally accurate this time with these corrections. So what we can do is we can define this Chaitra Purnima as the first full moon after spring equinox. This we already saw. This is the Ashada Purnima. We'll define as the first full moon after the summer solstice. So if this full moon happens right on the summer solstice, or just before that, we will not consider it for this kind of change. But if it is happening, if this full moon is happening right after the solstice hour and minute, we will consider it as the Ashada full moon, and we'll mark the end of this Ashada month at this point. So this will just mark the other month, the beginning of the Ashada month, if this was the combination. So this will be if this was the immediate previous full moon, so this will be the beginning of the Ashada month, and this will mark the end of Ashada month. But this is our cardinal point. Our cardinal points are these 4 points that we define based on this spring equinox, summer solstice, autumnal, and winter solstice, and rest of the months we will fit in between depending on how they come. So but these are defined as the cardinal months, or the cardinal points. Like the right after the spring equinox, we'll always have the Chaitra Purnima, and the Chaitra month ends, and right after summer solstice we'll have this Ashada Purnima, and the Ashada month ends in the Purnimanta system in the North Indian calendar, where the month changes on the full moons. And we can define similarly for the Amavasyas also, where the month changes for new moons. But yeah, the main difference is, instead of defining the name of this full moon and the month based on the stars, we have completely gotten rid of the stars, and we'll just use these as our anchor points: the summer solstice, and the equinoxes, and the winter solstice, and so on. So we expect this over a long time. This should turn out to be a tropical year, and with a period of 365.2422. And when this happens, there will be no drift in the seasons with respect to the months. So this is the correction that we want, that seasons won't drift away from their designated months. So this is a sample. So using these definitions, let's say we'll just try to plot. This is the old definitions of the months that are taken from the Drik Panchanka of the North Indian calendar, North Indian system. Between this about 10 years we considered. This is just a sample that we have posted here. So this we consider about 131 full moons in this 10-year period, of which 80 moons match. 80 moons match in whatever the season name appears here, the same season name appears here. Say if it is Vaishakha here, it is Vaishakha here, Jyeshtha here, Jyeshtha here. But in between there will be off. So all the black colors show where the moons match, the names of the months and the moons match between the old and the new system, and here it goes off. They are out of phase. So basically 30th March was right after 21st March will be vernal equinox. So 30th March is the first full moon after these are all the dates of the full moons, whatever, 30th March 2010, 28th April 2010, 27. These dates are all the full moon dates on the day in which full moon happened. Within these 24 hours, 23 hours, 56 minutes, or whatever this period of the day. So this is so this was named Chaitra in the calendar, in the present Hindu calendar. And since this is the full moon right after the vernal equinox, we will also name it as Chaitra. Right next month, this is named as Adhika Vaishakha, because of we defined this Adhika in the previous slides. So you can check out it there. So this is defined as Adhika, but we will not have that. So right after Chaitra we will have Vaishakha, So here, from here to here, the names go off. So here Vaishakha, this in the previous system it's called Vaishakha, but here it is Jyeshtha. In the here it was Jyeshtha. So this is right after the summer solstice. 26th June is there is a full moon. So 21st June will be the summer solstice. So this is a moon right after the Jyeshtha. So we'll right after the summer solstice. So we'll name it as Ashada in this according to this definition. Right after so summer solstice, we'll name it as the Ashada month. So now then it is Shravana, Bhadrapada. Then this is on 23rd September. On this year 2010, 23rd September had both the full moon and also the equinox, the autumnal equinox. So autumnal equinox was early in the morning at 8:39 a.m. and the full moon was in the afternoon at 2:47 p.m. IST, Indian Standard Time. So since the full moon is after the after a few hours after the so since the equinox is before the full moon, so the full moon is after the equinox, full moon is later. So full moon is later after the equinox, we can change the date. So this is right after the equinox point, so we'll change the name of the month. So this is new Ashvina according to this definition. First full moon right after the autumnal equinox. Even though it happens within the day, there is a couple of hours difference between the equinox and later the full moon happens. So this we change. And then this is the month, and Kartika is associated with Margashira. But when we come to this point, 21st December 2010, what happens is here also there are both the full moon and the solstice is happening on the same day. Full moon happens earlier, here it was later. The full moon here happens earlier. So full moon is in the afternoon at 1:43 p.m. but the winter solstice was in the night at 11:08 p.m. So here the full moon is before the solstice point, so we'll not change the will not apply this rule for this winter solstice. Will not name it as Pausha. So here, following this funda of Adhika Masas that we have discussed earlier, so we can call this Adhika Margashira. So this was Margashirsha month. So this will be named as Adhika Margashirsha. So what happens is, between these points, these four coronals, so this was the full moon after the spring equinox, this was the full moon after the summer solstice, this was the full moon after the equinox, autumnal equinox. So in between these points, we always expect, we usually expect there are only two full moons. There are only two full moons here, two full moons here, two full moons here, here also two full moons, and so on. But what happens here is, in between these two, the first full moon after the autumnal equinox and the first full moon after the winter solstice, there are three full moons. So this is out of the ordinary. So this way you will consider as the extra full moon. So between these 2 points we expect 2, but there are 3 full moons here. So this is the definition that we can use if we want as the extra full moon, and this will be the Adhika Masa. So this will be the 13th month in this year. So well, the lunar months will still have this the 354-day months and the 383, 384-day months. But the distribution will be a little different, or will be quite different in the longer term. So here, so this was the Adhika Masha. So because we get these 3 full moons between these 2 points, between the point of these equinox and the solstice point, we will consider this as Adhika. And right after this, the names will again be back in phase. So it was out of phase for these couple of full moons. Then this becomes the Adhika extra month. We will not change the name. So this was Margashirsha, this was Adhika Margashirsha, or we can name any of them as extra. So this was the first full moon after the winter solstice. So this was the winter solstice. This is since the first the full moon before the winter solstice was on December 21st. So the first full moon right after the winter solstice is only about a month later, like January 19th, and so we will name this as Pausha Purnima, and this is where we change the name. So now it is Pausha, Magha, Phalguna. So again, Chaitra after vernal equinox. This is the first month of first full moon after the vernal equinox. So we'll in the new system also we'll name it as Chaitra, and so on. So this can go on like this, and what happens is this will never shift from the season. So Chaitra will always be in March, April, and Ashvina will always be around this September, October, and Ashada will always be in June, July, and so on. So it will always be seasonally accurate, summer, winter, because it's pegged to the these solstices and equinoxes which actually define the season rather than the stars. The stars don't define the seasons. They may be just correlated over a period of time, for a certain period of time, but after that they drift. And also in Panchasiddhantika of Varahamihira, it is mentioned that, so we use this copy by Kuppana Shastri, translation by Kuppana Shastri, and more additions and corrections by Sharma, K.V. Sharma. So in this, on the page 65 of the, where they are discussing solstices and all, it is mentioned that the seasons Shishira. So this was the first month. It used to begin in right after the winter solstice, commences with the winter solstice. So we can stick to this definition. These are the expected seasons of names of the seasons. So the Shishira is always like the winter season and so on. So we can define a new calendar. So the previous calendar we defined with using the moons was for ritualistic purpose. So we can still celebrate all the 10th day of a full moon as a certain festival and so on. But for civil purpose, just like the Gregorian calendar, we can just have a season-based calendar defined like this. So right after the full winter solstice. So winter solstice is traditionally usually on December 21st or even on 22nd. So we'll just peg. We can take care of the leap days also here. We'll just discuss about a normal year, say 365-day year. One day can be adjusted here or anywhere. There are other ways of doing it. That's not important. So we'll define December 22nd to 19th February as this first month Shishira. So this will be the winter season, December, January, February mainly. So right after this winter solstice, we'll define December 22nd as Shishir month, and then we'll define as this is the Vasanta month, which includes the spring season. Vasanta is the spring, 20th February to so this will include the March, April spring season, and this is the Grishma season. Just before the monsoon season. This is Varsha, is the monsoon season. So we can define it like this, and this can be made exactly to be equal to 365.2422 days, which we have discussed in another video where we defined the improved Gregorian calendar. So Gregorian calendar has a slight difference. It has 365.2425 days. We can make a slight correction there, and we can make it exactly 365.2422 days, so that for thousands of years it keeps going without any changes in the dates of these equinoxes. So for the civil purpose, we can have this kind of a calendar, and for the ritualistic purpose, based on the full moon, we can have, if we want, a calendar that we defined earlier, the modified Hindu lunar tropical calendar. And this is just the tropical calendar. It's nothing to do with the moon. This is purely based on the solstices and equinoxes, nothing to do with the moon. But full moons are important for all these ritualistic purposes, full moons and new moons. So we can define the previous, whatever we saw can be used for ritualistic purpose, and this can be used for the civil purpose. Oh, by the way, I forgot to add that in this new definition, this Adhika Masa, where one extra moon appears between these cardinal points, instead of 2 full moons, 3 full moons happens, and we consider this as the Adhika Masa, extra month. This is the only correction needed in this calendar, and it will be in synchrony with the 360 tropical calendar with just this correction. Here, this is not the only correction. There are smaller term and longer term corrections, 122-year corrections, 19-year corrections, and even on some days, one lunar day will be added or removed, and so on happens here. They have lots of complicated corrections here, but here there is just one simple correction of this.